Hello, sports bettors. Welcome to another episode of Bet the Trends with Dave Bartu. This betcast focuses on finding and tailing the best trends to bet in college football and the NFL, with one goal in mind: winning tickets. This episode is powered by my friends at the Pro Athletes Hemp Association. Whether it's lotions or gels, I use their products every day to battle all sorts of aches and pains, whether it's arthritis in my hands from typing on a keyboard or getting a massage at a poker table. Their line of extra strength topicals works on pain and inflammation anytime, anywhere. Welcome to the College Football National Championship Betcast on Bet the Trends. I'm your host, Dave Bartu. Now, before I get into the numbers, a lot of you are new to what I do. And what I do is exactly what the name of the show is. We bet trends. I'm not a handicapper. I don't handicap teams. I don't have power rankings. What I do is I follow the trends in football to find edges. These trends come from a lot of different places. One of them, outcomes. Pass game outcome, looking at team profiles, scoring efficiencies. What has a college football team? What has an NFL team? Even to the point of the men's basketball and women's basketball tournaments in March. What have they been doing leading up to those games? So scoring efficiency is another trend we chase. Sportsbook lines, opening lines, closing lines, the movement in between, the initial line movement of people that are handicappers making a line move. These are all trends that I track and try to find edges in terms of a percentage of win-loss based on those trends and provide them to you. So that's what I'm going to be doing with each episode, is using trends, not handicapping, trends to find edges in everything college football and the NFL, whether it be championship games, playoff games, win totals, totals on games, spreads, you name it. If there is a trend, I'm using the numbers to try to find us an edge. Now, this episode, as I said, is on College Football National Championship. So the trend we're chasing here is the last 22 national champions. And if you sit with me for a little bit, I'm going to break down how I get to the final pool of teams you should be betting on. The College Football National Championship is literally the first trend I ever started following in football. This is where it began. It began back in 2005 because I was trying to track the trend to what made a national champion. And I started with recruiting. So all the narrative you hear today around college football and betting in sports when it comes down to College Football National Championship with relation to recruiting started way back in 2005. Now, since then, basically from 2002 forward, so you got 20 years, every single national title winner has one recruiting number in common. So all 20 of them from 2002 forward. They all had 4 straight top 25 recruiting classes. All of them. Okay, now that's a pretty basic one. This year there's 18 of them. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, Penn State, Clemson, Michigan, Notre Dame, Florida, Oregon, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida State, Miami, and North Carolina. So that's your basic 18 whose recruiting profile has won at least one national title in the last 20 years. Now, the second pass on this is, of those 20, 19 have been won by teams with at least one top 15 recruiting class and 2 top 10 classes. There is only one exception to that rule, and that was Clemson. Back in 2017. They had 4 straight years of top 25 classes. They had no top 10 classes. They had a 14, a 18, a 18, and a 16. They are the only winner in the last 2 decades outside the top 10 in recruiting over the last 4 years in my composite numbers to win a national title. Now, one thing to keep in mind is They also had an NFL first round draft pick. I'll get to that in a minute, why that's important. They also had a 5-star graded defensive coordinator, arguably the best defensive coordinator of the last 10 years, and a 5-star graded offensive coordinator. Again, keep those things in mind. Those are important as we go through this. So the teams coming into this season, basically, this is 19 out of the last 20 national championship profiles in terms of recruiting, is who had at least one top 15 and 2 other top 10 classes. A lot of obvious names there: Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, Penn State, Clemson, and Michigan. Those are the teams that meet the profile of 4 consecutive top 25 classes, and in those 4 years, at least one top 15 and 2 top 10s. So that is that is 95% of all your national championship games. So if you're going to bet on a long shot, it would be one of the other 8 teams I just mentioned. We'll go through those in just a minute. But your core group of recruiters that could win a national title, and we're going to break this down further in our second part of this segment, the core group are those 10. Now, in regards to teams that even made the national championship game. So first we're talking about 20 teams that have won a national title. Let's talk about the 40 teams that have made the title game. Only 4 of them have not come from my list of 4 straight top 25s, 1 top 15, 2 top 10s. So of the 40 teams that have played in the national title game, all but 4 of them are from that list, that first list. So I don't even think they have odds to bet making the national title game. You're still much better off betting those teams that meet the recruiting minimums. Now, the teams that made it there, that were outside of the Tier 1 recruiters, Virginia Tech, when they played Florida State, they had a 5-star defensive coordinator. Virginia Tech had a 4-star offensive coordinator. They had a 5-star special teams coach. The previous year, they were in my top 25 in total scoring efficiency, so they were good the year before. And they had a multiple-year future NFL first-round draft pick starter at quarterback, Michael Vick. Clemson, the year they won it. Now, the other year they won it, they were top 10 in recruiting. Okay, they were already there. The one year that they made it and won it, number 13 in recruiting, 5-star offensive coordinator, 5-star defensive coordinator, top 25 previous year in scoring efficiency, and a multiple-year starter future first-round NFL draft pick, Deshaun Watson. Oregon made it. Lost to Ohio State, number 13 in 4-year recruiting. They had a 3-star offensive coordinator, 5-star defensive coordinator, previous year top 25 in scoring efficiency, and multiple-year starter first-round NFL draft pick Marcus Mariota. Starting to get the theme for the teams that squeak in without the talent. They have really good offensive coordinators. They got really good defensive coordinators. They got an NFL quarterback. In fact, the only team not in my Tier 1 recruiter that made it without an NFL quarterback, that would be Oregon versus Auburn. They had a 5-star offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly, 5-star defensive coordinator Nick Aliotti. Previous year they were top 25 in scoring efficiency, so all these teams were good the year before. There was no new staffs, there was no new quarterback, okay, and they had a multiple-year starting quarterback, Darren Thomas. Never got drafted in the NFL. That Oregon is probably your biggest anomaly to make it. Clemson with Watson is your biggest anomaly to win it. Okay, but that's you're talking 2 teams out of 40 in a 20-year period. Focus on the trend, which is the upper level of recruiting. So the second tier of teams that I'd mentioned before that don't meet that Tier 1 recruiting, okay, the 1 in 20 team to make it, Notre Dame, Florida, Oregon, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina. Now, I just went over the teams that squeaked in the last 20 years to even make the title game. They had a bunch of things in common, right? Everybody who's made the title game was previous year top 25 in scoring efficiency that won it. Okay, so you got to be top 25 the previous year to win it. You need to have a 4-star better offensive and defensive coordinator. This is proprietary scoring and grading we do for all coaches in college football. We have 6,800 coaches graded since 2010. So you need to be 4 or 5-star offensive and defensive coordinator, multiple year starter at quarterback. The one guy that did it amazingly, Cam Newton. So that one kind of came out of nowhere. So there's your another 1 in 20 in terms of inexperience. But still, this was a top 10 recruiter and had the coaching and had the recruiting going into that national title season. So Notre Dame has the 4 straight top 25s. But do they meet the profile of a non-elite recruiter to even get in the title game? Well, they got a 2-star defensive coordinator and a new quarterback. I'm not betting that. That's never made it. That's never come close. So Notre Dame, even though they were number 9 in scoring efficiency last year, I'm throwing this out of the throwing them out of consideration. Okay, Oregon, number 38 in scoring efficiency last year. That throws them out. 3-star defensive coordinator. That throws them out. 2-star offensive coordinator and a new quarterback and a full new staff. Not betting Oregon. Okay, Auburn, 52nd in scoring efficiency last year. Throwing them out. 2-star offensive coordinator, 2-star defensive coordinator, and a new quarterback. Yuck. Throwing them out. Florida State, number 65 in total team scoring efficiency last year. And by the way, total team scoring efficiency is not just offense. It's offense plus defense. You have to have a balanced team. So Florida State last year, 65th in scoring efficiency. They got a 5-star offensive coordinator. Norvell's calling plays again this year. Okay, now that Dillingham's gone to Oregon. But they got a 2-star defensive coordinator, regressed badly, and a new quarterback, throwing Florida State out. Okay, North Carolina, 48th in scoring efficiency last year. They got a 5-star offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, middle of the road 3-star defensive coordinator, and a new quarterback starter, throwing them out. Okay, so this leaves us basically 3 teams now. Now Miami, number 66 in scoring efficiency last year, that should throw them out. Now, why they could be a dark horse to make the playoffs and be good? 4-star offensive coordinator, 4-star defensive coordinator, and they have a returning NFL graded quarterback. But it's an entirely new staff. Can't bet them to win it all. Really good dark horse, though, maybe to win the ACC. Keep that in mind. Florida, number 46 in scoring efficiency last year. That should toss them out. They got a 5-star play caller on offense, 4-star play caller on defense. That's really good there, too. But they got a new quarterback. Richardson has no experience. I know everybody has an NFL grade for him, and they have high expectations. He's got 0 experience. Unless he's Cam Newton, you don't bet on Florida. Okay, the one that I feel has the best shot, and I still wouldn't bet them because they don't have a good enough defensive coordinator, is Tennessee. Number 18 in scoring efficiency last year. The whole staff is back. Didn't lose anybody. They got a 4-star offensive coordinator. They have a 3-star defensive coordinator. I think that's where their weakness is. Don't think he's good enough, but they have a returning quarterback with a very high Heisman level ceiling. So if I'm considering any of these as a super long shot to bet, I'd probably take Tennessee, but the SEC is brutal. And the second one I might lean on is Miami because they're in the ACC. The SEC is such a tough conference to get through without elite talent. I think Miami would have a better shot. But overall, none of them meet the criteria of the 4 of 40 teams that have made a national championship game at this recruiting level. So when I come back, we are going to talk about Tier 1, the 10 Tier 1 recruiters, and how we break them down further by last year's scoring efficiency and their coordinators, and end it with who I feel is the best. Well, I've already made the bet on these guys, who I feel are the best teams to bet on to win a national title. You are listening to Bet the Trends with Dave Bartu, a betcast powered by the Pro Athletes Hemp Association and their awesome line of ache, pain, and inflammation fighting lotion and gel topicals found at hempforpros.com. The most important group in the national championship conversation are your Tier 1 recruiters. Now, we happen to have 10 teams that meet the Tier 1 requirements for the last 4 years. Now, keep in mind, in the last 20 years, the winner and loser of the national championship game has come from this group 36 out of 40 times. That's how strong it is. So even the loser is highly likely to come out of this group, especially when we take a look back at how weak the second tier is. There's nobody that checks all the boxes as a team that has made the national championship game out of the second tier. So when we're talking about trends in terms of betting for the national title, we are looking at these 10 teams. Now, there are two trends in the last 20 years that have been very strong in addition to the recruiting to narrow this pool, because right now we're at 10 teams and that's just too many bets. So, two things: scoring efficiency and coaching. So let's start with scoring efficiency. As I mentioned before, every team that has made the national title game but one the previous year was top 25 in total team scoring efficiency. So when you look at these top 10 teams, Georgia was number one in total team scoring efficiency last year. That's also why I told you to start, well, I told folks to start betting Georgia heavy in early November, because they were the only team that had the talent and was in the top three of total team scoring efficiency. At the end of the regular season, any team that is top three in offensive and or defensive scoring efficiency, those are your national title winners, period. And Georgia was the only one with the talent that was in the top three of offense and defense. Georgia was number one all the way from November. So Georgia was number one overall last year in total team scoring efficiency. So they meet last year's benchmark. Alabama was number 11. Boom. They stay in Tier 1. Ohio State number 3. They stay in Tier 1. Texas A&M number 5. They stay in Tier 1. It's amazing that they were number 5 in total team scoring efficiency with 4 losses. It means they lost a lot of tight games. Basically the same thing as, 2 years ago when they lost 1? Everything was close then too. They just won a lot more of those football games. Oklahoma number 10 last year, but an entirely new staff. We'll get to coaching in a minute. Penn State number 24. Dark horse for the Big Ten. Clemson at number 8. Michigan at number 4. Now the two teams that aren't in the top 25 are easily not in the top 25. LSU number 71 and Texas number 68. I'm going to throw both of those out. Wouldn't bet either one right now. Texas, it's tough because they have the coaching staff outside of the head coach. In fact, they're number 2 through 11. We're going to get to coaching in a minute. They're number 2 through 11, one of the best, probably top 5 in the country. It's just their head coach has performed under talent for his entire bloody career. Everywhere he's been, it's been bad to worse. LSU, number 71. They had it rough last year, all new staffing as well. I don't think they're going to make the jump anyways because the defensive staffing, get to it in a minute, is bottom half of the SEC as well. So now we are down to 8 teams that the trends say are the most likely to win the national title. In fact, these 8 teams hold all the trends that have 36 of the last 40 winners and losers of the national title game. Now, the last thing we're going to look at is coaching. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. How good are they? If they don't grade out in the top 40th percentile of all of our college football grades for offensive and defensive coordinator, only one team has won it all without that. 2 teams have won with a brand new offensive coordinator. Alabama had Daboll at offensive coordinator when they won it, but he came out of the NFL, and Joe Brady with Dave Aranda at LSU. Maybe the greatest lightning in a bottle season, along with Auburn and Cam Newton ever. So when I go through these teams, who doesn't have the 4- and 5-star offense and defensive coordinator to throw out? Michigan lost their 4-star offensive coordinator and their 4-star defensive coordinator. And that right there in and of itself should disqualify him. The defensive coordinator they got, though, is a 4-star DC. The new offensive coordinator has never called plays. So Michigan, I'm throwing you out. Clemson, new offensive and defensive coordinator. Nobody got hurt in staffing bigger than Clemson. They lost number one defensive coordinator in college football and a super elite offensive coordinator. Uh, and the guys that they went next man up, and the offensive coordinators never called a play. I'm throwing out Clemson. It's just too tough. All right. Texas has a great OCDC pair, but we already threw them out because they were bad last year. Same thing with LSU. They were bad last year, and their defensive coordinator, even if they had good scoring efficiency, which then everybody wouldn't have got fired and there wouldn't be a new staff, LSU is still not one to bet on because of the staff. Oklahoma, new offensive coordinator with no grade. Scares the heck out of me. High 3-star defensive coordinator. Very, very weak pairing. This is not a national championship pairing at Oklahoma. Maybe next year, if all the numbers and they get some experience, but Oklahoma is absolutely not one to bet on. Georgia and Alabama are a bit of a question mark because their talent level is so extreme. Georgia, they brought in a new defensive coordinator, Will Muschamp. C-grade defensive coordinator. That is not a national championship level defensive coordinator, but you still have Kirby. So that one's really hard to grade. But with Georgia, you also lost their elite offensive line coach, took a step back. They lost their elite special teams coach, took a step back. So they lost, 12 guys to the NFL draft and 3, 4, 5-star coaches. Too much to ask. I'm going to stay away from Georgia, even though the talent is there. Where the talent isn't quite there from an elite standpoint, they're still top 10 in talent. They're number 8 overall, but they're nowhere near Ohio State, Alabama, A&M, Georgia. That is Penn State, plus 8,000. So the 80-1 on Penn State. They got a new 4-star defensive coordinator, but that is a step back. They got a 4-star offensive coordinator. They got a good head coach, so it's a really good pairing. Now, if you wanted to take a dark horse to maybe win the Big Ten, this would be it. But Penn State is really the only one that doesn't have elite talent, top 5 recruiter, but has all the other boxes checked. In the right situation, Penn State could possibly win a national title, but still, I'd say outside looking in. That's the best dark horse tier 1 value by the trends. So that takes us down to really 3 teams, because I'm discounting Georgia, and I'm not going to play with that one. Got Alabama, Ohio State, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is the number 4 recruiter in the country this year. They got a 4-star offensive coordinator in Jimbo Fisher. Does a pretty good job. He's got a 4-star defensive coordinator. But that defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin, brand new, and they took a big step back from Elko. So I think staffing, this A&M staff got worse, not better. Solid combo. Weakness, though, is head coaching result. Jimbo, outside of Jameis Winston, 2 years with Jameis, underperformed the talent. Almost every single year. He has lost a ton of close football games. I just don't believe they have the talent. You should be expecting a national title out of A&M. But the offense and defensive coordinator combo, I'm not buying it. So I'm down to Ohio State and Alabama. If Alabama loses, I'm blaming Bill O'Brien. Because Bill O'Brien is a mid-level career offensive coordinator. Now, Alabama almost took Mike Locksley, who is a 2-star, horrible offensive coordinator, and almost made him look like a superstar. He got away with it until the last game. Lost the national championship game. Bill O'Brien, last year, got away with it until the last game. Lost the national championship game. Alabama has such ridiculous talent levels. Nick has gotten away with he breaks every trend. So as far as I'm concerned with Alabama, you're better to walk next to the devil than be in his path, not betting on them. And that leaves us only with Ohio State. 5-star offensive coordinator, 4-star defensive coordinator. I love the acquisition of the defensive coordinator, but downside, progressing through his defense is hard. It takes 3 or 4 years, so I don't expect huge results. But this was a top 5 offensive defensive scoring efficiency team last year. They have one of the best OCDC pairings. They have one of the easiest schedules compared to their talent. If I'm betting something, I'm betting Alabama, Ohio State. Long shot, if you wanted to just be greedy to have a big 80-1, I'll go Penn State. But I personally already put my money on Alabama. I got Alabama plus 190, and I got Ohio State plus 500. I kind of feel that Alabama is basically giving me a plus 500 with Ohio State, and I bet them evenly on that. But when it comes right down to the trends and the numbers, your 4 best teams to play to win and lose the national title game are Texas A&M, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. You can make a case because they check all the boxes off for Penn State, but I just don't think they recruit at the elite level of those other four. I'm Dave Bartu, and this is another episode of Bet the Trends. Thank you for joining me. This episode of Bet the Trends has been powered by the Pro Athletes Hemp Association and their fantastic line of extra strength topicals to fight pain and inflammation. Make those exciting days in the casino more enjoyable with fast acting extra strength topicals from hempforpros.com.